I'm going to argue that Matthew 24 deals altogether with the destruction of Jerusalem. After the last confrontations that Jesus had with the religious establishment, now that starts at Matthew 21, where he enters Jerusalem and runs through 23. He has the debate, the controversy, final controversy with the Jewish establishment. Well, they're trying to trip him up everywhere they can, and when they fail, it's back to the drawing board. And what that means is find a way to kill him. They're not going to be able to discredit him. So find a way to kill him. And so that section ends at Matthew 23 with all these woes, the denunciation, final speech. This is Jesus' last word to Jerusalem, and especially to the religious establishment, the Pharisees and the scribes. And it's an exposure of their approaches to things, their religion, and especially their hypocrisy. And woe, one on top of the other in that chapter. But it ends with a lament, and when he says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers its chicks under its wings to protect them. I wanted to do that for you, and you would not." Not you could not, but you would not. And so when he laments, and there's a passage in Luke which has Jesus weeping over Jerusalem. So that seems to me to say that when he says woe, woe, woe 7 times in this chapter, that he's not wishing some bad things to come upon them, but just it's a matter of fact. And when he calls them hypocrites so many times, that shows the reason, and they cannot be brought to repentance. And those that are sent to them to call them to repentance will not be accepted, but will be persecuted and even killed. And that's brought out in the end of those woes. And so he leaves the temple, leaves the city, and basically it's like when God's glory left the temple in days past. It abandons Jerusalem to its fate. And at that point then, after the confrontations, then chapters 24 and 25 turn to the future. And what the future holds is judgment. Judgment upon this nation, this city especially, and the temple, where the Messiah has been rejected by this nation. Judgment is going to come. And it is something that will take place in the lifetime of that generation. It's really important for you to get a handle on Matthew 24 because you run into it so many times. All the radio preachers and the premillennialists and dispensationalists and all this with the wars and rumors of wars and all this and the time is near and all this that makes people think the time is so near. This is where it comes from. And there are about 3 different things that you can say about that chapter that will nail it down forevermore, so there's just no way they can argue their point once you get some basic points nailed down, and that's what we want to do. The wars and rumors of wars and all that stuff, for example, that's not put in there to say it's a sign of anything. It's put in there in order to say you ought not to take this as a sign. The end is not yet. And so we'll look at that. It's he says what he does about that because those kind of conditions are what brings the false prophets out of the woodwork. And he warns against their coming in these kind of conditions and to say the end is not yet. Whatever end he's talking about. And I think he's not even talking about the end of the world, the final coming, but the end of the Jewish state. But we'll look at that later. Now, I think, and there's some argument about this. If you want to, you can read some of the commentaries. Some think that after about verse 35, I think it is, or 36, that it moves to from the destruction of Jerusalem to the second coming. I doubt that. I'm going to argue, and there are 2 or 3 arguments to be made, that the whole chapter is dealing with the destruction of Jerusalem. And then what happens? What actually do we have in chapter 25, where these parables of judgment, the parable of the 10 virgins, and then the parable of the talents, and then the other one I think is not a parable. It's a judgment scene. He'll sit on the throne of his glory, separate the nations as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. It's a comparison that he makes, but perhaps not a parable in the same sense as the other, just a picture of the judgment, but with some figurative language to illustrate it. The point that I'm in some doubt about here is where, if anywhere, do we get to final judgment, the final judgment, even in chapter 25. If we get to the end of chapter 24 and he's talked especially about the judgment on Jerusalem, then where, if anywhere, does it turn to discuss final judgment? And I feel a little bit of ambivalence about this. It may be that chapter 25 speaks of judgment in a more general sense, the accounting, some various things that need to be taken into consideration in view of the fact that you don't know the time. And I think the emphasis of this in the separation, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats, the emphasis in that is going to be what it is that puts a person in one category or another. And it may surprise you to pay a little closer attention to what that is. All right, first, the parable of the 10 virgins, verses 1 to 13. The situation is introduced, verses 1 to 4. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins who took their lamps, and that's better translated torches, like maybe a stick of some kind with rags wrapped around and oil put on it and set a fire and going out into the night with a torch is what this has to do with. Apparently, it says they went forth to meet the bridegroom, and apparently they are to meet, and there's to be a procession in the night. And he doesn't show up till the middle of the night. And so that's the picture that's being painted. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. And verse 3 shows what makes them either wise or foolish. For the foolish, when they took their lamps, took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. So it's a matter of being sensible enough to have foresight to make adequate preparation. That's what makes a person either sensible or foolish, as the case may be. Now, the foolishness is exposed when the event comes and the bridegroom finally appears, verses 5 to 10. Now, while the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. But at midnight there is a cry, behold the bridegroom. It's in the night. You see the torches. Somebody sees him first, and they holler out, behold the bridegroom. So everybody has to get ready now. They say, come ye forth to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps, and they start to get those things in order. And look what happens. And the foolish said unto the wise, give us of your oil, for our lamps are going out. Now I guess the idea is that they had put the thing out, and there was still some oil that could be relit. So they relit it, and pretty soon the thing's burning out. But verse 9 says, the wise answered, saying, peradventure there will not be enough for us and you. Go ye rather to them that sell and buy for yourselves. Interesting speculation about how they're going to do that in the middle of the night. I guess they get the merchant out of bed or whatever. But don't want to get lost in the details and miss the main thing. There's one main point he's making. And while they went away to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. They're not just going to have an endless amount of time to make preparation. The time was coming when he would appear. When he got in there, the door would be shut. I don't know whether there was anything about ancient weddings or marriage feasts that would that makes this a regular thing that happened. It's what happens in this instance. The door was shut, and then that's the end of any opportunity to get in. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, verily I say unto you, I know you not. it's a good place to dwell a little bit on the proper interpretation of Scripture. You can wonder how it could be they got invited to the wedding in the first place if the bridegroom doesn't know them. Well, I guess in our society it'd be maybe they're going to sit on the bride's side, but he doesn't know them, and they are not going to get into that reasoning. But you start dwelling on those, and you lose the point. See, there's just one point here, and verse 13 makes the application. Jesus drives the message of it home. Watch, therefore, for you know not the day nor the hour. You got to be on the watch. You got to be alert. You got to be prepared, because you don't know when the time is going to be. And that is the one point that's made here. So when you come to a parable like this, don't see how much you can get out of it. Really, when people say that, they're trying to see how much they can read into it. And there's just one thing to read out of it. And that's this message about preparedness, because if you're not ready when the Lord comes, then you're going to be in a situation like those 5 foolish virgins. Okay, we have to move on. Parable of the talents. And what we see in this one is that this readiness, or this preparedness, or watchfulness, is not just a matter of a steady waiting and watching, but it involves the way you're going to spend your time.
Could I ask you a question here? Do you picture these talents as talking about the coming of Christ? Who is the bridegroom coming, or do we know?
Well, his disciples are in a situation similar to this one, and I think no doubt that the coming, it's all based on the fact that Jesus is going away and coming. The thing that's difficult for me to work out is whether he continues to have this destruction of Jerusalem, that judgment, in the back of his mind, or whether he's moving on to something else. And I can't quite get that resolved in my own mind, although the judgment of the sheep and the goats is
pretty clearly
makes it broader than just a judgment on Jerusalem. Okay, verses 14, 15. Here's this rich man who is going away, and he wants his money to be working for him while he's gone. So he distributes it to his servants. Verses 14, 15. For it is as when a man going into another country called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his several ability, and he went on his journey. We will get lost here. We'll lose the point if we think of talents in the way of like we typically think of it. We think of skills and talents in that sense. This is talking about money. That's all this is money. It was strictly a measure of weight, large weight, and then, as Thayer's lexicon says, it was a sum of money weighing a talent. And they don't really know how much this is. These footnotes that say this is worth so many dollars and cents and so on, what is the use of that when money is not worth today what it was 10 years ago? There's just no use. The only way to get any real idea of this sort of thing is relative matters. For example, the denarius was the pay for a day's work. That gives you an idea. But the talent, there were a lot of variables. Different countries had a talent that would be of different weight than another country. It varied by time. It varied by metal, because it could be a talent of gold or a talent of silver or a talent of copper. So we don't know. There's a large sum of money. 10 talents would be a lot of money. 5 would be quite a bit of money. 1 talent would be a not inconsiderable sum. that's about as good as you can do with that. the one thing that we have that bears on it in verse 18, I think it's this one talent man that calls it the master's money. Now, the Greek word for that is silver. And so that may suggest a talent of silver, but there are others who argue that the word is used to just stand for money in a more general sense. And so if that's the case, we don't have much evidence to go on here. But it was distributed according to ability. You find somebody who had shown his ability to use money and to turn it into more money, and you entrust him with more than somebody who has not shown that much skill. And so that was the basis of it. And the expectation is that they're going to use this money in some way, buying or selling or investing, and get a return on it for the benefit of the master. They're going to have to report on this when he gets back, and he's hoping to get a good return on his money. And so in verses 16 to 18, the execution of this which had been entrusted to them. Straightway he that received the 5 talents went and traded with them and made other 5 talents. Double the money. In like manner he also that received the 2 gained other 2. But he that received the 1 went away and digged the earth and hid his Lord's money. Now, we're not told why. That will be explained a little bit later when he has to give an accounting. He'll explain why he did that. But the day of reckoning comes. Verses 19 to 30. And first, there's a shorthand for this, the 5 talent man and the 2 talent man, 19 to 23. Now after a long time, the Lord of those servants cometh and maketh a reckoning with them. So they settle up and they have to give an account. And he that received the 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Lo, I've gained other 5 talents. His Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will set thee over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. The 1 talent man is going to be cast into the outer darkness. This sounds sort of like a banquet situation with lights and enjoyment. You enter in. He's invited. And verse 22, and he also that received the 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliveredest unto me 2 talents. Lo, I've gained other 2 talents. His Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will set thee over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. So that's the reward. I'll set you over many things. You proved yourself. I remember one time Brother Cope talking about the young man at school, when I was also a young man at school, who was assigned the task of going around to the office buildings emptying the trash. And he told about what a good job he did. And he recalled this sort of teaching from the Gospels, that one who is faithful in a little task, you can promote him. But if he hadn't done a good job at that and just been careless, there's no way you're going to give him more responsibility than that. Okay, then it all comes down, though, to the 1 talent man and his accounting in verses 24 and 25. And he also that had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, and it's just don't make this kind of a speech when you have to when you have to give an accounting of what you've done. He said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man. I don't think you want to say that.
We've heard that as teachers.
Reaping where thou didst not sow, and gathering where thou didst not scatter. You know, you just get money from everywhere without going out and having to do the work. And I knew you'd be that kind of man, and it just terrified me. Verse 25, and I was afraid, and went away, and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, thou hast thine own. Here it is, your 1 talent. He hid it in the dirt. I preserved it safely. He would not take the risk. He would not do anything with it. He would not risk losing the talent. He was afraid of the responsibility, afraid of facing the his master in judgment and at the accounting when he had lost the talent. So he just buries it in the dirt. I was afraid. Boy, here's where some focus ought to be put. This fellow didn't have the boldness to go out and do something with that money. He didn't have as much. The master had looked at him, and he did not see him as someone who was really skilled at using money. So he didn't give him as much. He didn't have as much responsibility as the others. But he didn't have the boldness to go out and take a risk and try to turn that into something else. So this is what the Lord in the parable, here's what he thought about that. Verse 26. But his Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, lazy, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not and gather where I did not scatter. I don't know. That's not very complimentary. But he adopts that language, and it may just be that he's saying, well, given that I'm that way, if that is the case, then you took the wrong position. He turns the man's excuse against him. That's your condemnation. It's not an excuse for not doing what you ought to have done. Thou oughtest, therefore, and knowing me to be that kind of man, here's what you ought to have done. So he drew the wrong conclusion. Even if his master was that kind of a fellow, he drew the wrong conclusion about what to do about it. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the bankers, and at my coming I should have received back mine own with interest. That would have been absolutely the most conservative investment that you could make, and at least you'd get some interest out of it. But to bury it in the dirt, what could that ever do except keep what you've got safe? So, verse 28, the punishment. Verse 28, Take ye away therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him that hath the 10 talents. That's what you would have done, wouldn't it? Boy, if that fellow could turn money, if he could double the money, I'd give him the one. This is business, good business. And this is what he does. For he says, Unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not, even that which he hath shall be taken away. And that's just the way that is, and how could it be any different? There's no need to say, well, that's not fair. How can it be any different than that? That's the way things work. That you make good on the thing that's been entrusted to you, or you just lose that. And finally, verse 30, And cast ye out the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There shall be the weeping and the gnashing of teeth. So, it's not just a matter of waiting and being awake when the Lord comes, but it is also a matter of how you're going to spend your time. Remember that he's talking to these apostles. This is part of their training, and he's entrusted them with various things compared to money here. And he's going away. Now they're left with some responsibility. And whatever the application of it is, finally, it is certainly true of all of us that we've been entrusted with something. The application is not made at the end here. He just leaves it. After telling the story, he just leaves it and sort of assumes we're going to get the point here. But it seems to me that there's some easy ways to drive the point home here that ought to activate our consciences in this. What is the Lord entrusted to you? Now, sometimes that's money. But think about it. What else can you think of? He's entrusted you perhaps with a job and a position, and there's something to turn into something. See what you can do with it.
For a direct application in this class, we're all entrusted with the ability to teach.
Yeah. Giving you these students, this class. What are you going to do with that? Boy, I'm glad you thought of that. Boy, preach to these teachers here.
Or parents with a family.
Giving you a family, given you a husband to take care of, or a wife to take care of, and given you children. Yeah. Entrusted that to you. The whole idea of stewardship here. Entrusted something to you. And what are you going to do with it? He expects us to take the things that he's entrusted to us and turn that into something. What can you do to turn a profit, so to speak? To turn that into something good, something useful, something that will serve the kingdom. What can you do? Okay? Then to the last. The judgment scene, verses 31 to 46. But when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the angels with him, then shall he sit on the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all the nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as the shepherd separateth the sheep from the goats, and he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. This is not to say that he only then, at the coming, at the judgment, whatever the application of that may be, that only then does he sit on the throne of his glory. I mean, Peter's going to have him on the throne on Pentecost, Acts chapter 2. But when judgment time comes, he'll sit on the throne of his glory. Not that he's to begin a reign at that point, but he does sit on his throne at that point. And all the nations. This is a universal judgment. And it's not just affecting Jerusalem and the Jewish nation, but all the nations. And they're separated. How does it describe it so far? He shall separate them one from another. It doesn't say so far who he puts where, or what the difference between these is. But now notice verses 34 to 36, and it seems to me that in this section we get the key to what this is all about, what the difference is. Verses 34 to 36. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand. I believe this is the only time where the Son of Man, Jesus has identified himself as the Son of Man all through Matthew. Well, in the other Gospels as well. But I believe this is the only time where he refers to himself as the King. Then shall the King say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. So we've got Ephesians and all the New Testament passages that talk about this preparation that God has made of this kingdom, this state of blessedness. And they are invited to come in and to inherit. When you inherit something, there are implications of grace involved in that. It's not something that you got on your merit, but something inherited. Now the reason is given that they are given this reward. The reason in verses 35 and 36. For I was hungry and you gave me to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me to drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. Naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came unto me. I think I just want to insist on this, that we're not talking here. He's going to explain how it was. They say, when did this happen? And he's going to explain how it was. But if you stop right here, you have the point of this, that people are on the right hand or on the left hand, depending on the reaction that they make toward whom? Toward Christ. They were hospitable toward Christ. This is the attitude that people take toward Christ. And in this judgment scene, that is going to be the thing that would determine where they are going to be and what their destiny is going to be. This is not calling upon us. It's not just a matter of loving your neighbor in some general sense. There's a little bit more that I want to draw on to help explain some of these things. But it's not just humanitarian acts, not just charitable acts. Other passages may deal with that, but that is not what this is about. It is the attitude that people take toward Christ. that's going to determine whether they're going to be on the right hand or on the left hand. Well, they don't understand how that could be, and so he explains it in verses 37 to 40. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee hungry and fed thee, or athirst and gave thee drink? Some people think they see implications of grace in this, because people that are expecting to be saved on the basis of their own merit and their own righteousness, they can tell you why they are where they are. These people wanted to know. So it's not just usual expectation. When we see you athirst and gave thee to drink, when saw we thee a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed thee? And when saw we thee sick or in prison and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you did it unto one of these my brethren, even these least, you did it unto me. There are two passages that are especially important, helping us to understand this. One is Matthew chapter 10, which is where Jesus sends his apostles out. Now first, on this limited mission to go among the Jews in Galilee. And later on they'll have a greater mission, and when he talks about the things that they'll expect to find in their work, he even goes beyond the work in Palestine to I shouldn't say that. He goes beyond this immediate sending to some later things that are going to happen to them, and so it goes beyond the sending in Palestine. I keep saying that wrong. I have to leave it to you to figure out why I'm saying it wrong. But this limited mission goes beyond this before he's through with the description of it. But what we want to know is the end, the authority that these men have, and consequently the implications that has for how people treat them. Chapter 10, verse 40. He that receiveth you receiveth me. Apostles that are being sent out. He that receiveth you receiveth me, and he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me. He that receiveth a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward. And he that receiveth a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man's reward. And whosoever shall give to drink unto one of these little ones a cup of water only in the name of a disciple, which is tantamount to saying because he's a disciple. It's not just for some reason. It's because he's a disciple. What he does is going to show an attitude toward Christ. Verily I say unto you, he shall in no wise lose his reward. So these are people that will go out representing Christ. And to receive them is to receive Christ. Even the expression, one of these little ones, occurs here. We're going to have that. I guess I already read that part in Matthew 25. The other thing is in chapter 12 and verses 46 through 50, which talks about this spiritual kinship. He spoke in Matthew 25, one of the least of these, my brethren. Well, here's this kinship as it's defined in Matthew 12:46. While he was yet speaking to the multitudes, behold, his mother and his brethren stood without, seeking to speak to him. And one said unto him, Behold, thy mother and thy brethren stand without, seeking to speak to thee. But he answered and said unto them that told him, Who is my mother? And who are my brethren? And he stretched forth his hand toward his disciples and said, Behold, my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of my Father who is in heaven, he is my brother and sister and mother. The one who has the same commitment to the will of the Father that I have is the one that he recognizes a kinship with in a higher sense than the physical relationship with his mother and with his brothers. So we've got those two passages to prepare us for this one in Matthew 20:25. He first, in defining why the righteous, those on the right hand, why they're on the right hand and are given the favored position and invited to go in to the blessed state, he first says it is because of the way you treated me, the way you received me. And when the question is raised, well, when did this happen? He will say, it was not that I came to you personally. In fact, at the time this happened, he's going to be in heaven. But he sends out messengers, people that will represent him. This is not just general do-good, being a general do-gooder, I think is what I'm trying to say. Spiritual. And it is the attitude toward Christ, and the opportunity to show an attitude toward Christ comes when his messengers come with the word. And this sounds like the sort of situation that was described in chapter 10. They're going to be persecuted, thirsty, fleeing from enemies, even imprisoned, and the way they dealt with them in that kind of situation. And that really would, I think, I discussed this a little bit at the end of chapter 10. It sounds like a little bit to do, give a drink of water to somebody and then get the same reward that the people that suffered get. Well, there may be more to that than we think. It may be putting yourself at risk to receive somebody into your house that's a hunted man and to be hospitable and to give him a drink of water. And that will show where you stand, and you may be running a risk. So there may be more in this than just a simple act of hospitality. You really are sharing the lot of that one who comes to you. Okay, we got a little bit of time this morning. Anybody want to argue with this? It's about the only time in the whole course I'm giving anybody a chance to argue with anything. But our time has been so short.
So you wouldn't apply this to just doing benevolent deeds in general?
I don't think so. There are some, if we were studying Proverbs, I would think it possibly could be different, because there's some passages in Proverbs where it says that you do a good deed to somebody, you're doing it to God, something similar to that. But in the context of Matthew, in which he has defined these spiritual relationships, and he has talked about the sending out of people and the reception given to them because of who they are, it just seems to me that it gives a broad context that defines this for us in another way. And it seems to me to make a lot more sense. It's the Good Samaritan helped the fellow along the road, and he didn't ask who he was, didn't perhaps know whether he was a Christian or not. So this is not to say that we don't have a general humanitarian duty to perform toward other people. But I just think that this passage is dealing with situations where we have an opportunity to show the attitude toward Christ. It's someone representing Christ who comes. And we treat them, and so in doing that, we show what we think about Christ. And let me get through with this, and then I'll try to confuse you some more. 41 to 45 then, the condemnation of the curse, and this ground is covered in reverse. Again, with them then. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into the eternal fire which is prepared for the devil and his angels. Not into that kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world, but into that fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Not prepared for you, but prepared for the devil and his angels. And you share their lot because you just chose to cast in your lot with Satan and his messengers, his angels. And the reason is given. For I was hungry and you did not give me to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger and you took me not in. Naked and you clothed me not. Sick and in prison and you visited me not. Then shall they also answer, saying, Lord, when saw we thee hungry or thirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you did it not unto one of these least, you did it not unto me. So this is what we thought the plan of salvation was. That it's whether you're going to receive Christ or not, the attitude you're going to take toward Him. And that's going to be the line to be drawn between those that are going to inherit the kingdom and those who are going away into the punishment. And it ends then, verse 46, with a description of final destiny. And these shall go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So these eternal issues are drawn based on the reception that a person gives to Christ as He appears in these that He sends. So it seems to me that the really important point to make here are the issues that are involved in preaching the gospel. It's in my ambivalence over where this goes beyond the destruction of Jerusalem and something that was going to take place in that generation. I've experimented with a little bit with the idea that that this judgment scene maybe should be understood in a more general sense of perhaps even the thing that is going to happen as the messengers of the gospel are sent out, and there's a separating effect that takes place with that. And here is the essence of it, why people are in one position or another. At any rate, a judgment ahead. Now this is the future, chapters 24 and 25. After the nation has rejected Jesus, now the future and judgment ahead, a judgment that involves especially Jerusalem because it rejected the Messiah, chapter 24. But in chapter 25, a judgment that affects all nations. And people are judged depending upon the way they have received Christ in the gospel, either positively or negatively. Any last shot?